This is number 4 in a series showing the restoration of a Zither banjo. These are antique banjo made by A.D. Cammeyer in London in 1902. First we'll show the finished fretboard, which is what we're working on today. This is the before picture. There's missing ivory dots, extremely worn finger and positions, and the fret between the frets are very scalloped. So the fretboard is loose in places. This is a close-up of the scalloping between the frets. It's extremely severe. So first I take off the nut, and immediately I'm confronted with the decorative mother-of-pearl inlay coming out. There's a wedge with a shim of some kind. I'm surprised by the material underneath the inlay. I think it's hide glue mixed with sawdust, perhaps. And I can't tell if it's original or if it's part of a previous repair, but because it was already cracked in the center, I believe it might have been a previous repair. So I clean it off and fit it in, and this is a gauge. I made a wooden gauge to test the depth to verify exactly how thick my patch needs to be. Instead of using putty like the previous repair, I've made a custom shaped piece of mahogany that I will glue in place, and this will be a far better repair that'll last far longer than filling the way the previous inlay was done. So I've made a patch to fit the space, and just now clamping it. It's been clamped overnight. And I'll test the inlay. It fits very nicely. So I used wood glue on the piece of wood, and now I'm using acrylic resin on the inlay. Clamp it up again. Notice that I use a strap of leather to protect the finish on the other side of the clamp. So that's very secure, very nicely flat. Now we're addressing the loose fingerboard, which has to be addressed one fret space at a time, because it's just so severely worn. So there'll be a repetition of this process multiple times. I'm using a little jig that I've made to hold the frets in place with the clamp. I'm using a banjo string to push the glue down into the gap. You can see the squeeze out. That's always a sign that you've got a good coverage. Gaps on the back of the neck on the edge of the fretboard can also be filled in the same way and scraped. Now I'm just staining the back of the neck. This is just a dark brown leather dye to replace some of the stain that had worn off. Now I'm staining the front of the fretboard, not completely obscuring the wear from the years of use, but to give it a consistent tone.
Banjo solo, Bunch of Rags, played by Mr. Vest L. Osmond, Columbia Records.
Now I use a straight edge to rock as a rocker, to rock on the fretboard to find the high spots, and then I use a file to file down the highest frets. These frets were as badly out of position as the fretboard itself, so there was quite a lot of adjustments to be made. Now I'm crowning the frets. So after you level the frets, they're flat on the top, and you use a smaller file to round them over to give them a narrow spot on the top for the contact with the strings. The shorter fret rocker will give you a better indication of 1 or 2 or 3 frets in a row as to how close they are to even, to find a high spot more easily. And now I'm polishing each fret, some polishing compound and a Dremel tool to take away the scratch marks from the files, to give the fret a smooth surface. These are the pearl dots, the new pearl dots.
What I'm seeing, up to this point, these are the original frets. And these frets, these are narrow. These frets are new. From here down, new frets have been added. They're wider than the older.
It's hard to say why these particular frets might have been replaced. It's just speculation. So I clean the holes that the pearl dots go into with the Dremel tool. Then glue them in place with the same acrylic resin. Now I'm filling the wear grooves in the fingerboard from the years of playing that have worn depressions in the fingerboard. And also the scallop effect. This banjo was played very, very much. Or in the previous repair, those scallops were created on purpose. I just can't imagine why that would be, because pressing a string into such a deep depression would actually stretch it out of tune. So I'm filling the fretboard to be level between the frets, and pressing on the string will no longer stretch it out of tune. And then, just like the tuning pegs, after the resin is dry, you scrape it level and flat back into shape with a razor blade. And this is just the first pass of the rough leveling and repair of the fretboard. In the following videos, there's quite a lot of further adjustment, fine-tuning, fret leveling to come. But this is a final view of the fretboard after all of that is finished. So that's the repair of a 1902 Cammeyer banjo. Don't forget to like and subscribe.